My name is Olivia Bennett, and I'm 33 years old. 3 months ago, I canceled my wedding. Walked away from the man I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, and transferred $70,000 out of our joint wedding account. Not because he cheated, not because he hit me, not because we stopped loving each other. I left because the man I loved finally said out loud what he'd been quietly believing for months, that I wasn't enough. And the strange thing is, when the moment came, I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't throw things. I wrote a confirmation code on a fogged bathroom mirror and walked away. Ethan Walker and I met 4 years earlier through mutual friends. He was 29, worked in corporate communications, and had the kind of effortless confidence that drew people in. He remembered tiny details from conversations. He checked if everyone had enough food before serving himself. He laughed easily. I fell in love with his kindness first, then with his steadiness, then with the life we imagined building together. His family fascinated me. His father, Richard Walker, had built a regional construction company from nothing. A genuine bootstrap success story. The kind people admired, the kind magazines profiled, the kind sons grew up trying to understand. Richard and his wife Margaret lived in a sprawling house, filled with evidence of his achievements, custom cabinets, handcrafted additions, rooms expanded by his own hands. He'd built much of it himself. I respected that. I genuinely did. I never imagined I'd eventually lose my engagement because of it. I worked as a software architect. I'd spent 10 years designing systems most people would never see. I made solid 6 figures. Not construction empire money, but enough to provide, enough to save, enough to contribute $70,000 toward our wedding. Ethan contributed $3,000 from his own savings. Together, we opened a wedding account, $73,000. 8 months before the ceremony, the venue was booked, the photographer secured, guest lists finalized. Everything looked perfect. Until 3 weeks before everything fell apart. It started innocently. Ethan would mention how Richard bought Margaret's engagement ring outright. How Richard built their first house himself. How Richard never financed anything. I would smile. That's impressive. Then I'd move on. But the comments kept coming, becoming less like admiration, and more like comparison. 2 weeks before the cake tasting, we had Sunday dinner at Richard and Margaret's house. Richard proudly showed me the newest addition he'd built. Contractors wanted $50,000, he said, running his hand across the polished beam. I did it myself for $15 in materials. That's incredible, I admitted. I wouldn't even know where to start. He laughed. That's the difference between people who build and people who type. He glanced toward me. No offense. The room went quiet. I looked at Ethan, waiting, expecting. He heard it. He smiled awkwardly, then changed the subject. That should have been my warning. But love has a way of making excuses. You convince yourself silence isn't agreement. You tell yourself everyone has flaws. You choose optimism because the alternative hurts too much. Then came the cake tasting. Tuesday, 4 o'clock. A cheerful consultant placed 6 cake samples before us. By the 3rd slice, a lemon-raspberry combination Ethan himself had chosen. He sighed. Not a small sigh. A heavy one. The consultant looked up. Everything okay? It's fine. Ethan said, the cake is fine. Everything is fine. Nothing about his voice sounded fine. I knew that tone. I hated that tone. What's wrong? I asked quietly. He stared at me. There was disappointment in his eyes, mixed with resignation. I'm thinking about my parents. What about them? They got married at City Hall. Okay. My father was focused on building something that lasted. I set down my fork. Ethan, He didn't waste money on parties. We both wanted this wedding. I know. He looked down at his plate, then back at me. I just wish. He hesitated. I waited. The consultant stopped writing. The bakery suddenly felt too quiet. I wish you were more like my father. He swallowed. At least he built something. The consultant froze. I stared at him, then slowly wiped my mouth with my napkin. I know. His eyes widened. What? I know that's what you wish. Don't be dramatic. You've been making it pretty clear. My father had better priorities at your age. Different priorities. I corrected softly. Not better. His jaw tightened. You're being sensitive. I glanced around the bakery. At strangers pretending not to listen. At the consultant desperately studying her clipboard. Then I stood. No, I said. I'm finally paying attention. I walked out of the bakery before Ethan could stop me. Behind me, I heard the consultant awkwardly clearing her throat, and Ethan calling my name, Olivia. Wait. I pushed through the glass doors, into the late afternoon heat of the parking lot. Olivia. He caught up to me, just as I reached my car. Where are you going? Home. To do what? I looked at him. To think about whether I wanted to marry someone who saw me as a disappointment. His expression hardened immediately. I never said that. I let out a humorless laugh. You just told me you wished I were more like your father? You're twisting what I meant. No, I said quietly. I'm listening to what you actually said. He threw his hands into the air. You're being sensitive. I'm being observant. I held his gaze. This isn't the first comment. Ethan. It's just the first one you made in front of witnesses. He looked away first. So what now? He asked. You're going to sulk. No. I unlocked my car. I'm going to think. Then I paused. You should think too. His eyebrows pulled together. About what? About whether you actually want to marry me. I slid into the driver's seat. Or whether you're settling because I'm available? Then I closed the door. His stunned expression followed me all the way home. I arrived at our apartment just after 5:30. For several minutes, I stood in the kitchen staring at nothing. 4 years, 18 months engaged, thousands of tiny moments, movie nights, inside jokes, holiday traditions, the future we'd planned. I could still hear Ethan laughing as we assembled furniture, still remember how excited he'd looked when we toured wedding venues. I loved him. That was the problem. Love made you negotiate with your own instincts. It taught you how to ignore warning signs. It encouraged you to explain away disrespect. Because surely, people who loved you didn't quietly wish you were someone else. Right. My eyes drifted toward my laptop. Slowly, I sat down, opened it, logged into our joint wedding account. Balance. 73美元. Ling ling ling. My contribution. 70美元. Ling ling ling. Ethan's remaining contribution. 3美元. Ling ling ling. I stared at the numbers. Then I opened another tab. A new savings account. Single ownership. Olivia Bennett. I hesitated. One final chance to reconsider. My finger hovered over the keyboard. Then Ethan's voice echoed through my mind. I wish you were more like my father. At least he built something. I completed the transfer. 70美元. Ling ling ling. Confirmation. VD 74892 Yang 3. Transfer successful. He sat back, waiting for guilt, waiting for panic. Instead, I felt calm. The calm terrified me, because it meant this decision hadn't been born at the bakery. It had been growing inside me for weeks, maybe months. I simply hadn't admitted it yet. I walked into the bathroom, turned the shower on hot. Steam filled the mirror. Using my fingertip, I wrote VD 74892 Yang 3. Large, clear, Impossible to miss. Then I shut off the water, packed a suitcase, laptop, phone charger, clothes for several days. I took one last look around the apartment we'd built together. The framed photos, wedding brochures, guest seating charts, evidence of a future suddenly suspended in midair. Then I left. The hotel room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and fresh sheets. I dropped my bag onto the bed, texted Ethan, taking some space to think. You should too. 2 hours later, his response arrived. This is childish. I stared at it, then locked my phone. No explanation. No concern. No. Are you okay? No. Can we fix this? Just judgment. Childish. I ordered room service, turned on the television, and waited. At 9 o'clock, my phone exploded. Call, 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 text, text, text. Where did the money go? Did you seriously empty our wedding account? Call me now. This is theft. My father is going to hear about this. I silenced my phone, took another bite of my overpriced hotel burger, felt strangely peaceful. By 11 o'clock, the tone shifted. Okay, I understand what you did. Very clever with the mirror. We need to talk like adults. You can't just take money we both put in. I'm calling my lawyer tomorrow. I actually smiled. Lawyer. Interesting. I placed my phone face down, finished dinner, went to sleep. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls, 3 voicemails. I listened to the first, Ethan's voice, tight with anger. I don't know what kind of point you're trying to make, but this is insane. You took our wedding money. Vendors need payments. You need to put it back. Deleted. The second voicemail, Richard, Olivia. I don't know what's happening between you two, but you need to be a woman about this. You don't take money that doesn't belong to you. Call Ethan back and fix this. Deleted. The third voicemail, Ethan again. Only this time, he was crying. I'm sorry. Silence. I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't mean what I said. His voice cracked. I was stressed. Please, come home. Please put the money back. We can work this out. I closed my eyes. The apology should have softened me. Instead, something hurt worse, because even now, he spent more time talking about the money than the damage he'd done. I texted him. I took my contribution, $70,000. Your $3,000 remains in the account. Check the balance. He called immediately. I answered. You can't do this. I can. You took our wedding money. I took my money. We agreed. We agreed to be partners. My voice remained calm. You agreed to marry me. You told me I wasn't enough. That's not what I meant. Then tell me what you meant. Silence. Ethan. I was frustrated. You wished I were someone else. I wished you'd push yourself more. I closed my eyes. There it was. Not even 24 hours later. Not stress. Not misunderstanding. A belief? You don't want me. I said softly. I do. No. I swallowed. You want an upgraded version of me. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. His breathing grew heavier. So what he snapped? You're calling off the wedding. I'm reconsidering whether we should get married. You're being dramatic. I'm being clear. I stared out the hotel window. If you want to marry me as I am. I took a breath. A software architect. A woman with a stable career. Someone who built a life through code instead of concrete. If that's not enough? I looked down at my hands. Then we shouldn't get married. He whispered. You're holding the money hostage. No. I ended the call. I'm protecting what I built. Then I hung up. At noon, My mother's name flashed across my screen. Of course. Family networks moved fast. Hi. Mom? Oh. Thank goodness. What happened? Ethan's mother called. I leaned back against the hotel headboard. Of course she did. She said, "You stole the wedding money and disappeared." I laughed bitterly. I didn't steal anything. Then I told her everything. The comments, the comparisons, Richard's jokes, the cake tasting, the sentence that shattered something inside me. My mother remained quiet for several moments. Finally, she sighed. Olivia. What? That's not okay. Emotion tightened my throat, unexpectedly. I know. But running away isn't the answer. I'm not running away. I looked around the hotel room. I'm creating distance. I'm evaluating whether marrying someone who doesn't respect me is a good idea. You sound calm. I stared at the city outside. Cars moving. People living ordinary lives. I'm exhausted. Mom. My voice cracked for the first time. I'm tired of feeling like I have to earn love. Silence. Then softly. Oh. Sweetheart. Tears burned behind my eyes. If Ethan can't love me exactly as I am. I wiped my cheek quickly. I'd rather be alone. My mother exhaled. Just don't make permanent decisions while you're hurting. I looked at the confirmation email sitting in my inbox. The transfer, the hotel reservation, the shattered future. I whispered. I'm finally making permanent decisions because I've stopped ignoring the truth. Thursday afternoon. I was sitting in the hotel lobby, working on my laptop, when someone stopped beside my table. I looked up. Ethan. He looked nothing like himself. His eyes were swollen. His hair was pulled back carelessly. He wore sweatpants instead of his usual polished clothes. He looked exhausted. We need to talk, he said. I closed my laptop slowly. I'm listening. He glanced around the lobby. Can we go somewhere private? I looked directly into his red-rimmed eyes. No. I folded my hands. We can talk right here. Where there are witnesses. He stared at me, then slowly sat down. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, Ethan whispered, I'm sorry. I waited. Really? I am. I nodded once. Okay. His face crumpled. Okay. That's all you have to say. I'm at his chaza. What else is there? You apologized. I heard you. But apologies don't fix the actual problem. His voice trembled. What problem? I held my breath, then asked the question that had haunted me for weeks. Ethan. I looked directly at the man I had planned to marry. Do you honestly think I'm enough? He opened his mouth, closed it, then hesitated. That hesitation shattered whatever hope remained inside me. Finally, he answered quietly. I think. He looked away. You're comfortable. My heart sank. Maybe, he whispered. Too comfortable. I nodded slowly, because suddenly, everything made sense. Maybe too comfortable. The words landed between us, like shattered glass. I stared at Ethan across the hotel lobby table, not because I hadn't expected the answer, but because the foolish part of me had still hoped he would deny it. That he would say, no. Olivia, you're extraordinary. You're enough. I've been blind. But now I see it. Instead, he confirmed the fear I'd spent months trying to outrun. I wasn't failing. I simply wasn't the person he'd secretly wanted me to become. There it is, I said quietly. His eyes widened. What? The truth. I didn't mean you did. I folded my hands carefully in my lap. You think I've settled? No. You think I've stopped growing? Olivia, you think I'm capable of more, and that I've chosen comfort instead. He rubbed his face. I just think you could do bigger things. Bigger, according to who? Silence. Ethan. He looked down. My father never stopped pushing himself. I nodded. Of course, there he was again. Richard Walker. The invisible third person in our relationship? I let out a slow breath. You don't understand. Ethan said, I admire you. But I just don't understand why you don't want more. I blinked. What exactly do you think I have? What? You said I don't want more. I leaned forward slightly. I worked through college. I took internships while my friends traveled. I spent years working 80-hour weeks, building expertise. I saved $70,000. I helped support us. I've built a career that provides stability. I held his gaze. What part of that says I don't want more? His expression twisted. I know you've worked hard. Then what? I don't know. His voice cracked. My father was always building, and because I'm not building houses? I whispered. You think I'm standing still? That's not fair. Neither was comparing me to him. He looked devastated. I don't know how to explain this. You don't have to. I stood slowly. Because I finally understand. That evening, I returned to my hotel room. I sat in silence. No television. No distractions. Just me and the future I'd spent 4 years planning. I thought about our first date. How Ethan had laughed when I admitted I secretly loved debugging impossible problems. How he'd said my eyes lit up whenever I talked about work. I thought about the engagement, the tears in his eyes when he proposed, the promises we'd whispered in bed afterward. I thought about all the moments I'd mistaken admiration for acceptance. Had he loved me? Yes, I truly believed he had. But love wasn't always enough. Sometimes people loved you and still wanted you to be different. More ambitious, more outgoing, more successful, less emotional, less independent, more like someone else. And eventually, you stopped recognizing yourself beneath all the adjustments. I wasn't willing to disappear, not even for love. Friday morning, Richard called. I stared at his name on my screen, then answered, Hello? You are making a mistake. I almost laughed. Good morning to you too. My son loves you. He also wishes I were someone else. He made one comment. It wasn't one comment. It was months of comments. I sat beside the hotel window. The cake tasting was simply the first time he said it loudly enough that strangers heard. Richard sighed heavily. So Ethan thinks you should push yourself more. So what? I blinked. So what? That's what partners do. They motivate each other. There's a difference, I said softly, between encouraging growth and telling someone they aren't enough. You women are too sensitive these days. I stared out at the city. Cars flowing through intersections, people rushing toward jobs, entire lives unfolding. I make 6 figures. I spoke calmly. I've built a stable career. I've never asked Ethan to support me financially. I've contributed equally. I've loved your son. But because I didn't build a construction empire, I closed my eyes. I'm somehow lacking. Richard remained silent, then finally said, You could do more. I laughed. A sharp, surprised sound. There it is. What? The answer. You agree with him. I agree that potential should be realized. I nodded slowly. You know what potential is. What? A moving target. I looked down at my hands. You reach one milestone. Then people ask why you haven't reached the next. You earn 6 figures. They ask why you aren't earning 7. You buy a home. They ask why it isn't bigger. You build software. They ask why it isn't visible. I swallowed. I'm tired. Tired of proving my worth. Richard's voice softened. My son is heartbroken. He'll survive. He loves you. I believe that. Then why are you doing this? I closed my eyes. Because love without respect becomes resentment. And resentment destroys marriages. Silence. Then, you're giving up. No, I whispered. I'm finally choosing myself. Saturday morning. I toured apartments. The first smelled like mildew. The second overlooked a parking lot. The third had sunlight pouring through floor-to-ceiling windows. 10th floor. Quiet. 20 minutes from my office. As I stood inside the empty living room, I imagined bookshelves against the walls, plants by the windows, coffee on Sunday mornings. Peace. I'll take it. I told the leasing agent. I paid the deposit. Signed the paperwork. For the first time in weeks, I breathed easily. Sunday afternoon. A text appeared from Ethan. Please. One last conversation. No yelling. No drama. Just talk. I stared at it. Then replied. Okay. Coffee shop. Monday. 3 o'clock. Monday arrived, gray and overcast. The coffee shop smelled of cinnamon and espresso. Ethan was already there. He looked better than the hotel visit. Cleaner. Composed. But his eyes still carried grief. Thank you for coming. I sat across from him. You're welcome. He twisted his cup nervously. I've been thinking. I waited. You were right. The words seemed painful. I have compared you to my father. He inhaled shakily. I didn't realize how much. I didn't realize how unfair it was. I nodded once. Okay. He frowned. Okay, what do you want me to say? Aren't you glad I understand now? I studied him. Understanding wasn't transformation. Understanding was merely the first step. You recognize the problem. I said, that's good. It doesn't change anything. His face fell. Why? Because recognizing a pattern doesn't mean you won't repeat it. I'll work on it. You should. I'll go to therapy. I think that's a great idea. Hope flickered in his eyes. Then, but not for me. His expression crumbled. What? You should do it for yourself. For your future. There is no future without you. I looked at him carefully, then asked the question that mattered most. Right now. I leaned forward. Can you honestly tell me you're proud of what I do? Olivia, can you tell me that designing software systems matters just as much as what Richard built? He hesitated. Again. That hesitation hurt more than the original insult, because this time, he knew exactly what was at stake. It's different. He whispered. That's not an answer. It's a different kind of work. Ethan. He looked down. You can see what my father built. You can touch it. You can drive past it. And my work, it's... He struggled. It's invisible. I nodded slowly. There it was. The truth neither of us had wanted to face. You respect tangible work more. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Tears filled his eyes. I love you. You love parts of me. I love all of you. No. I shook my head gently. You love who you hoped I'd become. His shoulders slumped. You think I can change? People grow. Growth isn't the same as becoming someone else's ideal. I stood. He stared up at me. So that's it. I looked down at the man I'd once imagined, waiting for at the end of every day. The man I'd chosen. The man who had also chosen conditions. 4 years. He whispered. We're throwing away 4 years. My voice trembled. I'm not throwing them away. I swallowed hard. I'm honoring what they taught me. Tears finally escaped down his cheeks. I don't want to lose you. I closed my eyes briefly, then opened them. You already did. You already did. For a moment, neither of us moved. The sounds of the coffee shop continued around us. Milk steaming behind the counter. Cups clinking. People laughing at nearby tables. Ordinary life unfolding, while hours quietly ended. Ethan stared at me as if I had spoken a language he no longer understood. "I don't know how to fix this," he whispered. I believed him, because for the first time since all of this started, I realized something painful. He wasn't manipulating me. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He genuinely didn't understand why what he'd said had destroyed us. Because from his perspective, wanting me to become more was love, encouragement, motivation. He couldn't comprehend why I heard criticism, where he heard belief in my potential. And maybe that was the tragedy of it. Neither of us was evil. We were simply incompatible in a way love couldn't overcome. "You don't have to fix it," I said softly. "You just have to understand it." His face crumpled. "I understand now." I looked at him for a long moment. "I think you understand why I'm hurt." I picked up my purse. "But I don't think you understand why I can't stay." Tears slipped down his face. "I would have changed." I smiled sadly. "No. What? You would have tried." His breathing hitched. But eventually, another comparison would have slipped out. Another sigh. Another comment. Another reminder that somewhere in your mind. I touched my chest lightly. "I wasn't quite enough." He lowered his head. "I never wanted you to feel that way." "I know." That was what made leaving so difficult. Intent didn't erase impact. Love didn't erase resentment. Good people still broke each other's hearts. I reached into my wallet and placed enough cash on the table to cover my coffee. Then I looked at him one last time. "I truly hope you're happy someday." His voice cracked. "I thought that was supposed to be with you." I swallowed hard. So did I. Then I walked away. He didn't follow. This time, he finally understood that he couldn't. The next 2 weeks became a blur of logistics. I moved out of our apartment, while Ethan stayed with his parents. I packed dishes we'd picked out together, folded blankets we'd fallen asleep under, wrapped, framed photographs in newspaper. Every item carried memories, tiny reminders of a life that had once felt inevitable. Sometimes I cried while unpacking boxes. Sometimes I laughed at old inside jokes scribbled on sticky notes. Sometimes I sat on the floor of my new apartment, wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Then I'd remember the cake tasting, "I wish you were more like my father," and the doubt would fade. Because people who truly valued you didn't accidentally reveal disappointment when describing you. Mutual friends began reaching out. "What happened? Are you two okay? Can this still be fixed?" I kept my explanations simple. We realized we wanted different things. Some accepted it immediately. Others pushed. One friend finally sighed. "Ethan says, you overreacted." I stirred my coffee. "Maybe. You don't sound convinced." I thought for a moment, then said quietly, "Sometimes people only see the explosion. They don't notice the tiny cracks that caused it." He nodded slowly. "I guess relationships rarely end over one argument." "No." I smiled sadly. "They end because one argument finally exposes the truth." 3 weeks after leaving the hotel, I finished moving into my new apartment. 1 bedroom, 10th floor, a beautiful view of the city skyline. It wasn't the future I'd imagined, but it was mine. I bought new dishes, new bedding, plants for the windows. I assembled furniture while listening to music. Every bookshelf I built, every picture frame I hung, every small decision reminded me that rebuilding wasn't glamorous. It wasn't dramatic. It was ordinary. And maybe that's what healing actually looked like. Not grand gestures, just choosing yourself repeatedly, day after day, until it stopped hurting quite so much. I blocked Ethan's number after the coffee shop, but he found other ways. Emails, messages through mutual friends, handwritten letters, left with the concierge downstairs. Every message carried the same theme. Please reconsider. I love you. I'll change. I didn't respond. Not because I hated him, but because healing required distance, and distance required boundaries. Once. Nearly a month later, he appeared outside my apartment building. Security called upstairs. Do you know an Ethan Walker? I stood by my window, looking down at the lobby entrance. He held flowers, his shoulders slumped, his face hopeful. My chest tightened. Then I remembered sitting in that bakery, embarrassed, diminished, trying to convince myself I'd misunderstood. No, I told security quietly. I'm sorry. I don't wish to see him. When I stepped away from the intercom, my hands shook. Loving someone wasn't always a reason to let them back in. Sometimes, loving yourself mattered more. 4 weeks after the hotel, Margaret reached out. Ethan's mother. We had always gotten along. Her message read, I don't know your side completely, but I know my son is devastated. Whatever happened, whatever he said, he never intended to hurt you this badly. Please consider giving him another chance. I stared at the message for a long time, then replied, he loved who he hoped I would become. That's different from loving who I already am. I truly wish him happiness, but it won't be with me. She never responded. Eventually, life settled. Mutual friends stopped asking questions. People chose sides, or chose neutrality. Work continued. Deadlines arrived. Projects launched. I rediscovered pieces of myself I'd forgotten. I read more, started cooking again, went running on Saturday mornings, visited my parents without wedding planning, dominating every conversation. Sometimes loneliness crept in unexpectedly. During grocery shopping, during rainy evenings, while passing bridal boutiques, I mourned the future I'd imagined. But gradually, I stopped mourning the future I'd escaped. 3 months later, the engagement ring sat in a velvet box inside my dresser. The wedding had been officially canceled, the deposits forfeited, the guest list abandoned. The version of my life I'd carefully planned no longer existed. I heard through mutual friends that Ethan had started seeing someone new. A man? No, a woman. A commercial real estate executive. Successful. Driven. Owned her own firm. Came from a prominent family. Someone who understood his language of ambition. Someone who, perhaps, resembled the standards he'd inherited. I genuinely hoped they made each other happy. Bitterness had become exhausting. Peace felt lighter. The $70,000 remained untouched. My freedom fund. Some days, I considered using it as a down payment on a condo. Other days, investing it, building wealth, building security, building choices. I hadn't decided yet, but for the first time in years, the future belonged entirely to me. Eventually, I agreed to go on a date. Then another. Nothing serious, no pressure, no wedding venues, no timelines, just curiosity. On one second date, the man sitting across from me smiled and asked, "So what do you do?" "I'm a software architect." His eyes lit up. "Really?" I laughed. "Really? What kind of systems do you build?" I blinked. "Excuse me, what kind?" He leaned forward. "That sounds fascinating." No comparison. No subtle disappointment. No implication that code mattered less than concrete. Just genuine interest. As if who I already was might actually be enough. We scheduled another date for the following week. I don't miss Ethan, at least. Not the version of him who existed at the end. Sometimes I miss the relationship I thought we had. The safety I believed in. The certainty. But I think that version was partly fiction. I think Ethan had always compared me to Richard. He'd simply hidden it better. The cake tasting wasn't the beginning. It was the reveal, The moment private expectations became spoken truths. And once truth arrives, you can't unknow it. The confirmation code on the bathroom mirror wasn't revenge. It wasn't cruelty. It wasn't theft. It was self-respect. It was me saying, if you don't respect what I've built, you don't get access to it. Richard called me weak, said real women stayed and worked through problems. But I wasn't running away. I was walking toward a future where I didn't have to audition for love. The irony is this. I did build something. I built a career. I built expertise. I built financial security. I built resilience. I built boundaries strong enough to protect my dignity. You can't drive past my work and point at it. You can't touch lines of code the way you touch steel beams. But invisible doesn't mean insignificant. And just because something isn't physical, doesn't mean it isn't real. Buildings stand still once they're finished. Software evolves, adapts, improves. Maybe I'm more like the systems I've spent years creating. Always learning, always growing, always becoming, just not into the version someone else imagined for me. The wedding fund became the freedom fund. The heartbreak became a lesson. And the future is finally mine, to build,